think of it this way. The body is not water. It's not 85% water or 65% water. It's electrolyte soup, right? It's not even saline. It's electrolyte soup. It's a whole constellation of electrolytes in that tissue. And magnetic fields interact with those electrolytes, and that creates charge. It amplifies the charge. It basically charges the battery. So our body, our skin contains this bag of fluid called electrolyte soup. I call it electrolyte soup. And it's just waking that electrolyte soup up. It's charging it. And then the body uses that energy for whatever it wants.
Welcome to the PEMF Effect, where breakthrough science helps take control of your health. I'm Dr. William Pawluk, and I'm here to guide you in tapping into the power of PEMF therapy for recovery, vitality, and total body wellness. From overcoming chronic pain, optimizing brain health, boosting energy, and aging with strength, this podcast is your path to cutting-edge solutions for lifelong well-being. If you're ready to move beyond symptom management and tap into your body's natural healing ability, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Today's episode is a previously recorded session from a summit where I was a guest speaker.
Hello, and welcome back to our Reversing Mast Cell Activation Syndrome and Histamine Intolerance Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Meg Mill, and today I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Dr. William Pawluk. He is a holistic MD near Baltimore, Maryland, and he is considered the foremost authority on the use of pulse electromagnetic field therapy. And we're going to talk all about pulse electromagnetic field therapy, or otherwise known as PEMF, today, and how that can benefit your health in so many ways, and also how that can specifically help with mast cell activation syndrome. So I am so excited to dive into this topic. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Pawluk.
Thank you very much, Meg. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on and sharing with your audience.
Well, I'm so excited to dive into all of the great information that we're going to talk about today. But before we get started, I love just sharing stories, because I know a lot of us have personal journeys that really brought us to this expertise. And I'd love for you to share your journey and what made you an expert in PEMF therapy.
Well, thank you for asking. I didn't really have an amazing personal story, but as a family physician, and I was a medical director of a group of family physicians in New Jersey, we had the biggest family medicine group on the whole East Coast. We had 14 family doctors in our group. And we all shared patients. So we would round in the hospital, go into the hospital and visit the patients in the hospital. And in a very short period of time, back in the, let's say, mid-'80s, late 80s, we had 3 patients almost in a row got admitted into the hospital with gastric bleeding, and one of them almost died. And so the question came up to me this is stupid medicine. They're all dying from gastric bleeding from ibuprofen. So they're taking ibuprofen chronically for their pain. So I said, well, what can we do to stop this kind of thing from happening? And I thought about all the consultants and the specialists and the team members in my group. And I said, nobody has any better solutions. So I said, well, I need to find a better solution. And in order to find a better solution, I said I had to go outside the house of medicine. I had to go outside. I said, okay, well, I had heard about acupuncture. I had an interest in acupuncture. And one time when I was in London visiting, I actually visited a bookstore where they had some acupuncture books. So I brought them home and I said, well, okay, what is this stuff? And it was strange. The language was strange, chi and the different meridians and so on. So I said, wait a minute. Okay, so I put that aside, left it aside. And then years later, after medical school, got into the practice, got into this group. And I said, okay, maybe it's time to go revisit that. So I did. I went back and I actually got training. I did 2 years of training in acupuncture for physicians. It wasn't regular acupuncture. It was an acupuncture course for physicians. So it was truncated. It was shortened. I didn't need to do all the training that acupuncturists did, because they had training in things that we already had training in medicine. Right? So basically, shall I go ahead?
I'm so sorry. I'm just shutting off. There was a sound on my computer. I can cut that.
All right. That's no problem. I'll turn off my notifications as well. So basically, I went and got training in acupuncture, and then I came when I finished in about 1990. So 1990, it's a long, long time ago in a land far, far away. We couldn't do acupuncture because people said, "What's acupuncture?" And nobody wanted needles. They didn't understand acupuncture, so people wouldn't do it, and you spend too much time and effort trying to explain it to people one at a time, and that didn't make sense. So I said, well, let me find another way to do acupuncture without using needles. And I discovered that in the Orient, in Korea and Japan and China, they were using little tiny magnets on acupuncture points. I said, okay, well, let me try that. Lo and behold, it worked. But along the way, I discovered that actually it did a lot more than just acupuncture. It was actually helping the tissues around the magnet as well. And then I got bigger and bigger and bigger magnets and saw that it was doing a lot of stuff. Now, in addition to doing acupuncture, so whenever you put a magnetic field on a body, it's stimulating the acupuncture points and meridians. Well, I didn't understand why at the time, but it started doing a lot more for me that I saw than acupuncture would do it. And I didn't have to explain it as much because I wasn't putting needles in people. Right. So from that point, it grew, and I started reading the science. I started using it more. I got different kinds of devices, and it wasn't just magnets like fridge magnets or tiny little magnets that you put on points. There's all kinds of magnetic devices would now be able to do all sorts of things. So eventually, I stopped doing acupuncture, and all I started doing was magnetic field therapy, and I was getting much better results than I ever got with acupuncture. Now, the good thing about acupuncture is that people, when they left the office with acupuncture, even though they didn't like the needles being put in, they all left with a smile. Everybody's kind of blissed out. It was very happy and relaxed and so on. So acupuncture had tremendous benefits that way. So after sort of that process continued and I learned more and more about it, I met a doctor from the Czech Republic who got his PhD in magnetic field therapy for rehabilitation medicine, rehab. And so as a result, I got a manuscript from him about the Eastern European literature that he translated, and that then resulted in a book called Magnetic Therapy in Eastern Europe, a review of 30 years of research. So that was, again, back in 1992, 95, somewhere in there, where I got all this information about research that had been done in Eastern Europe for years, decades. So basically, the doors blew wide open on the concept. And it had a rationale, it had explanations for why it worked, it had animal studies and human studies. So wow, we started really going full bore. And then so I kept using magnetic fields for all sorts of things and eventually published my next book, which is called Power Tools for Health. So that book has 500 references. So I scoured the scientific literature on magnetic field therapies. I put together this book with evidence for the treatment of 50 different health conditions, and discovered that there were about 25 different actions in the body, now 27, and there are more than that. 27 actions in the body. So the actions are more important than the disease, because most diseases have a lot of these actions in common, which is to reduce inflammation, for example, and so on. So we'll talk about that in a second. So that was so the journey continues. And then I became basically, the more and more I did, the more I wrote, the more I researched, the more I read, the more I discovered what magnetic fields could do in the body. And it's amazing. And so the Russians, the Eastern Europeans had discovered this a long time ago and had done quite a bit of research. And it's just, we basically had to bring it to the West. We had to bring it into the English language. And we've been able to do so now for the last I've now been working with magnetic fields for about 30 years.
Wow, that's very impressive. I love the change because, really you were looking for answers that you weren't seeing. You had all of this training, all of this expertise, but you're not able to get some of those results that you want, that we want to get. So we need to look at things a different way. So can we start for people that just don't know? I love PEMF therapy, but I want to just have an explanation for people that don't exactly know what it is. You were kind of telling about the magnets, but if they would get a device or something, what they're actually doing to their body.
All right. It's very, very important. And it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And there's a lot of physics behind this. So, but the first thing we have to do is to get rid of the elephant in the room. Mm-hmm. And the elephant in the room is EMF versus PEMF. More people know about EMFs and their risks and they're worried about them, and like 5G and Wi-Fi and cell phones and so on. So that's EMF. And I consider EMFs to be environmental magnetic fields. Although they are electromagnetic fields, they're environmental. They're around us. Mm-hmm. The EMFs are very, very different from PEMFs. And EMFs are designed for communication purposes, mostly. Wi-Fi, again, microwaves. But EMFs also include microwave ovens. So that's microwaves as well. So the two characteristics of EMFs that are very important. Number one is they're broadcast into the environment. They go on forever. That's what we call open loop. Mm-hmm. And so they're broadcast by microwave towers, they're broadcast by other kinds of towers, radio waves and television waves and radar are open loop as well. And they're broadcast into the environment. They have their effects on the body as well. They're not as pronounced or not as obvious or not as researched as EMFs are. So EMFs, their risk comes from the fact that they're extremely low frequency. If you have a very long wavelength, it's long enough to go through a body. It doesn't stop in a body, it just keeps on going. EMFs, on the other hand, because they're microwaves, are extremely short waves, extremely short, millimeters, which means they get absorbed. And when they absorb, they heat. And that's the whole basis behind a microwave oven. They cook. Right? So EMFs, if you do a cell phone to your ear and talk for 10 or 15 minutes, and you take your cell phone away from your ear, you'll notice your ear is quite red. In fact, you'll notice the opposite ear is also red, not as bright as the one that you had your cell phone against. And what was happening basically is you were cooking your ear. But because they get absorbed into the body, they're also, to some extent, cooking the brain. And we now know that people who use a cell phone on the same side of the head all the time or all day long or for hours and hours a day are at higher risk of developing an acoustic neuroma, which is a tumor, a brain tumor, on that side of the brain. So because it's heating the tissue and it's causing damage to the tissues. So that's EMF. So put that aside. Right? That's extremely low frequencies and they're absorbed and they cause their damage. PEMFs have a very, very different mechanism of action and a very different mechanism of production. They're not a microwave tower. They're not broadcasting. So PEMFs are produced by a current flowing through a wire. So let's say my thumb is a wire, and this current flowing through that wire. And that current flowing through the wire typically is pulsing. It's modulating or oscillating. So every time a current pulses in that wire, a magnetic field is produced. It's perpendicular to the flow of the current. That's a law of physics. Right? So what happens is that the wire pulses, the magnetic field produces, and it collapses back. As it passes, then it collapses back down again. So basically, it's going like this continuously as the field is going through the wire. So the magnetic fields then are contained within that wire, contained within the electrical current flowing in that wire. Okay, it's not broadcast, it's in the wire. And so it goes in and out, pulsates. That's why we call it pulsed electromagnetic fields. They're pulsating in and out. And as they go into the body, as the magnetic field goes beyond the wire, now again, you have a shielded wire. You're not getting any contact with the electrical field. You're not electrocuting yourself. It's shielded, right? Because it's shielded, then you have no contact with the body with the electrical part of that field. You're just getting the magnetic field. And so that magnetic field goes into the body and comes back out again, goes into the body and comes back out. It has no wavelength, right? It's just pulsing in and out. But because it acts like magnetic fields in general, which means that the body's completely permeable. It's transparent to a magnetic field. So the magnetic field goes in and comes right back, goes in, comes right back. Think of it this way. That magnetic field pulsing in and out is like the wind in the trees. You can't see it, and the only reason you know it's there because the leaves are moving, or the branches, or the tree, or whatever, right? So it's causing reactions in the body that stimulate the production of charge or energy. So the leaves moving in a tree are creating energy in the tree, and they're helping the tree to milk the sap up the tree to nourish the leaves and the branches. Well, when the magnetic field passes into the body, it's essentially doing the same thing. It's stimulating the body. It's stimulating electrically charged particles in the body. So what's not electrically charged in the body? Every molecule in the body has a charge associated with it. Every molecule. So that means it's stimulating anything in its path. And when it does that, and it's waking things up. It increases the total amount of energy in the tissues. So it's causing, basically, it's charging the battery. Think of it this way. The body is not water. It's not 85% water or 65% water. It's electrolyte soup, right? It's not even saline. It's electrolyte soup. It's a whole constellation of electrolytes in that tissue. And magnetic fields interact with those electrolytes, and that creates charge. It amplifies the charge. It basically charges the battery. So our body, our skin contains this bag of fluid called electrolyte soup. I call it electrolyte soup. And it's just waking that electrolyte soup up. It's charging it. And then the body uses that energy for whatever it wants. And if the body doesn't need it, it ignores it. So the amount of charge the body can produce, as opposed to electrocution, electrical stimulation or electrocution, you're introducing charge to the body, and it may be too much for the body, in which case it burns, right? Or it helps to destroy tissue, create damage. But PEMFs don't do that. The body has to produce the charge, so the body only produces as much charge as it can. So there's a natural safety limit to the magnetic field stimulation to the body. But when you wake the body up, it all of a sudden has juice. It all of a sudden has energy to do what it needs to do. So what happens with an injury? Let's take this as an example. If you have an injury, if you cut yourself, that's an injury to the body. Now the body has to repair that injury. It has to cover that wound so that the environment doesn't leak into the body, right? Or the fluids of the body don't leak out into the environment. And so what it does then is it needs energy to do that. And the big source of energy to do that is called ATP. So there's a huge production amount of energy produced whenever there's a wound. And that energy is needed then to cause that wound to be closed and to begin the healing process for that wound, to restore the tissue back to whatever normality it can achieve. So magnetic field therapy then initiates that charge, and the body then uses that charge to do the work it wants to do, that it needs to do. And that's where the 27 different actions of magnetic fields come in, or 25. All these ATP is produced, stem cells are produced, nitric oxide is produced, circulation is increased, pain is reduced. Again, there's about 27 different actions, and those actions are described in my book, Power Tools for Health. So that means I don't control the process. The magnetic field doesn't control the process. The magnetic field is just a stimulus. It's a push to the body to do more. And so all of a sudden, all kinds of healing begins. So typically, a wound will heal in half the time with magnetic field therapy. The body has its own normal sort of process of healing that wound. But when you give it the energy that it may need in addition, so you supply it with more energy than it would normally have, that means the wound will heal in half the time. So we leave it alone, we're basically leaving it to chance, the body's ability to be able to do it. But now we're enhancing the body's ability to actually do that work.
That's fascinating.
Right. So that's basically how it works. And it's safe. And it's the second force of the universe. So electromagnetism is the second force of the universe. So it's around us all the time. What we're doing now is we're harnessing it in a very specific way that's very safe and very productive for the body.
Are you tired of living with chronic pain? Medication only masks the symptoms, but real healing starts at the cellular level. I'm Dr. William Pawluk, the leading expert on PEMF therapy. Pulsed electromagnetic field therapy is a science-backed, drug-free solution that helps reduce pain, speed up recovery, and improve overall health, right from the comfort of your home. Take advantage of an exclusive 10% discount on drpawluk.com PEMF systems. Visit drpawluk.com, that's drpawluk.com, to register and claim your savings. This limited time offer is available only to registered listeners. Don't miss your chance to experience the benefits. Terms and conditions do apply. Don't just manage pain, transform your health. Visit drpawluk.com today, and let's get started on your healing journey together.
Yes, and I love how you said your body will do what it needs to do. So
what it wants and needs.
And wants and needs. Yes. So that's very different than a lot of other things where we're trying to force a function or make something happen. You're giving it the energy that you're giving it the the tools basically to do with what it needs and wants to do.
More of what it needs and wants to do. If you talk about just that for just a second, the body's very inefficient. We think of the body as being very efficient. If you look at molecular processes in the body, the way water is made, the way minerals interact with various tissues and so on, we are only about 25% efficient in converting fuel into work. Most of the fuel that we take into our bodies is converted into heat to maintain body temperature. Cars do the same thing. Cars are about 25% efficient in converting fuel into work, the engine running. Right? So our muscles have to shiver, our muscles have to react, and they maintain body temperature. So most energy is wasted, largely wasted. The body is not that efficient. So when you're doing magnetic field therapy, what you're doing is you're increasing, and I've shown this, you increase the energy production in the body by about 20%.
Yeah, that's significant.
That's significant.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so there are different levels. How would someone determine what, like if you're using it for different, I guess let's start with a little bit of different scenario. I mean, it's everyone can use it because we're giving the body what it wants and needs, but different scenarios where people would actually think, okay, yes, I need it for this. Or can you give us some examples of, I mean, I know pain for sure is one.
That's a key one. And the most common reason for people to go to a doctor's office is for pain. Mm-hmm. Right? That's the most common. They can go for wellness, they can go for other reasons, but the most common reason people go to a doctor's office is pain. Pain drives people to move, to change, to shift, and to seek help. But it certainly goes beyond that. Inflammation is one of the most important aspects of magnetic field therapy. And that relates back to MCAS, Mast Cell Activation. So pain, inflammation then causes the cells to be irritated and inflamed. And so the inflammation then initiates a whole bunch of downstream processes as well that relate to damaging the cells and the tissues, and it has to be controlled. Too much is not good for you. Too little is not good for you. You need to find a balance in the amount of inflammation. Well, PEMFs significantly increase anti-inflammatory actions. And they do that mostly through the adenosine receptor. They do that in a lot of different ways, but one of the key ways that it happens is through the adenosine receptor. Adenosine is the key molecule for making ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and ATP is the energy molecule of the cell. So it's not only important in making ATP, in other words, having the adenosine be used by the body to actually create ATP, but ATP by itself attaches to adenosine receptors in the body. And those receptors are activated during cell injury. They're activated during any kind of inflammatory process. But so acute inflammation is good to a point, right? And if it doesn't get basically modulated or controlled, then it becomes rampant or runaway inflammation, or it becomes chronic. So acute inflammation helps to heal a wound or a cut. It's necessary for that. You have to have that function to be able to heal that cut. But once the cut's healed, it needs to go away. The inflammation should settle down. So if it continues and the cut continues to be red and it's got swollen and it's inflamed and it looks red and also becomes a thick scar, well, that's runaway inflammation. Well, the body needs help to keep that down. So most of the conditions that we deal with as clinicians, or we don't see acute injury all that often, unless you work in an ER, right? We tend to see chronic. People come to us with pain because it's chronic. People don't come to us because they got a splinter in their finger. They do, but not too often, right? When the splinter has been there chronically and now it's inflamed and sore and everything, well, then they come to you and they want you to take it out. Well, adenosine receptors then do that job of decreasing chronic inflammation. So adenosine receptors, many different kinds of adenosine receptors, and they're all over the body. They sit primarily on white blood cells. So it's been discovered that magnetic field therapy up to about 15 Gauss. So Gauss is the measure of magnetic field intensity. An MRI is about 10,000 to 40,000 Gauss. So 40,000 of these Gausses, right, are produced by MRIs. Well, the body produces extremely tiny magnetic fields. The Earth's magnetic field is about half a Gauss. So Gauss is a scientist back in the 1700s, 1800s who just defined that term Gauss. His name was Gauss, in fact. So the Earth's magnetic field is half a Gauss, but you need 15 Gauss optimally at the site of the injury or the site of the inflammation to quench that inflammation. So a half a Gauss is not good enough. The Earth's magnetic field is not good enough. So, hate to tell you this, grounding is not good enough because it's the Earth's magnetic field,
Yeah.
right? So you need stronger amounts of magnetic field intensity to be able to truly optimize the effects of the adenosine to quench that inflammation. So that's a huge part of what magnetic fields do, is to decrease inflammation.
Yes. And with people, do you ever notice with people with MCAS, sometimes people are more sensitive. So do people have sensitivity when using this or therapy, or is it pretty much safe for everyone, even if you have sensitivity to a lot of things?
So the way PEMFs, the sort of a role of PEMFs in MCAS is caused by what?
Activation of the mast cells, the
But
overactive.
what causes activation of the mast cells?
Well, it's toxins or
What causes all
infections,
that?
inflammation.
Inflammation is the
Yes.
root. So the root around all of this, right?
hmm
So toxins, insecticides, pesticides, injury, cutting,
hmm
right, burning,
Yes.
all of that is basically inflammation.
hmm
And so what magnetic fields are doing relative to MCAS is you have to decrease the inflammation to decrease the amount of MCAS.
hmm
So that's at the root cause of it. Now, you still need to help yourself with the histamines. You still need to help yourself with the all the other inflammatory molecules that go with MCAS. But decreasing inflammation is a critical part. But imagine you have a big swollen area on your hand and it's red and it's sensitive. Well, how am I going to quiet that down? I still have to touch it. I still have to be next to it, and it's not going to necessarily be that comfortable. But you need to do that in order for that process to settle down over time. So PEMFs can temporarily cause an increase in inflammation. Why? One of the things they do is to increase circulation. And what happens when you increase circulation? You release more histamines, you do more MCAS. So in the short run, you have to burn the fuel, you have to create the reaction in order to, you have to climb the hill to get to the other side. It's not going to be, you're going to have to huff and puff. It may not be comfortable climbing that hill, but you got to climb it to get to the other side. Well, and that's what we're doing with MCAS too. We're quieting down the inflammation. So if we do too much, too fast, it's going to be uncomfortable. So what you do then is you sort of modulate, you gradually increase the amount of magnetic field intensity and treatment time. I call that going low and slow. But you can't finish the job until you decrease and quench the inflammation.
Yes.
Right? Obviously, you have to remove the insecticides, you have to remove the pesticides, you have to remove the heavy metals, you have to remove the viruses, the bacteria, the fungi, anything that's in that process has to be taken care of as well in the long run. But you help that process along tremendously. I was taught by Dr. Omura acupuncture, another different acupuncturist where I got some training. And Dr. Omura developed what's called the bidigital O-ring test. So people do muscle testing.
hmm
And muscle testing, he found, can be considerably unreliable. He was an MD who got his PhD in resonance physics at the same time he was going to medical school.
Wow.
A pretty smart guy.
Yes.
So he discovered that, in fact, what happened at wounds, when you have inflammation, macrophages and other white cells gravitate to the site of injury or the site of inflammation. And because they've been scavenging all over the body, they've been scavenging viruses, pesticides, insecticides, heavy metals, and so on. And all of a sudden, they gravitate to this area of inflammation, and many of them die because they're old. They just die. They're senescent, right? And what happens when they die? Whatever they've been scavenging goes poof into the tissue.
Yes.
Right? That's one of the causes of chronic inflammation, is because our body's defenders are actually become part of the inflammatory process. So he discovered that we get that to happen, and the magnetic field therapy then, by decreasing inflammation, decreases that secondary attack. So decreasing MCAS requires you to take care of the environment, not just one factor.
Your body was designed to heal, but illness, chronic disease, stress, injury, and time can slow that process down. What if you could restore your body's natural ability to recover, recharge, and feel its best? The key to healing is giving your body the energy to repair itself. PEMF therapy does exactly that. Recharging your cells, improving circulation, reducing inflammation, and helping you function at your best. For decades, I've studied this technology, worked with hundreds of medical professionals, and helped thousands of people reduce pain, regain energy, and take control of their health. However, not all PEMF devices are created equal. No one size fits all. We offer personalized consultations so you can find the right device for your needs, backed by real science and trusted results. If you're ready for a real solution, let's talk. Schedule a consultation at drpawluk.com. That's drpawluk.com, because real healing starts at the cellular level.
And are there different, I know there are different levels, like you were saying, of intensity, or, the Gauss. How
Right.
do you determine are there different Gauss levels for different, different things you're trying to do?
Yes, really important question. So what happens is a lot of the research and a lot of people who sell PMF devices don't even talk about the fact that how deep do you need to treat?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm treating the skin, all I need is 15 Gauss,
Okay.
right? But because magnetic fields, like color, like sound, like light, like heat, like cold, drop off very rapidly from the source. Once you move away from the source, it drops off very rapidly. And one of the rules that we use for that, to calculate that, is called the inverse square law. And we use the inverse square law in medicine to calculate the dose of radiation when you want to destroy tissue with radiation. Nobody wants to do that, but if you have to do that, you have to do the right calculation. Well, magnetic fields are like that. They lose intensity over distance. So, for example, if you have a 1,000 Gauss magnetic field, 1,000, 1 centimeter away from the source of that 1,000 Gauss magnetic field, you've lost 75% of your magnetic field. It drops from 1,000 Gauss down to 740, so 25%. I take that back. So from 1,000 down to 25%. So, okay. Right? So from 1,000 down to 250. That's a huge drop in the magnetic field intensity. So, but if you need 15 Gauss deep into the body, not just on the skin, but even on the skin, you need 15. So if you get less than that, you're just not going to do a good job of healing the skin or decreasing inflammation. For example, if you want to treat across the brain, say you have an inflamed brain, you have TBI, traumatic brain injury, you have encephalitis, you have all kinds of other sort of problems going on in the brain. You have mold toxicities or heavy metal toxicities, and you have neurodegeneration. Well, you want to decrease the degeneration, but you got to go across the brain to do it. Unfortunately, magnetic fields go through a brain like they do any other part of the body without any blockages whatsoever. They're completely safe going across a brain. So that means you need a 4,000 Gauss magnetic field on one side of the brain to deliver 15 Gauss to the other side of the brain. Right? Does that make sense?
It does, yes. Mm-hmm.
Right? So you have to do that calculation. And in my book, Supercharge Your Health, and also on drpawluk.com on my website, I have a blog about adenosine and inflammation. And that blog gives you the tables that you need to calculate the dose when you're moving deeper into the body.
Okay, so that you had, yeah, and we can put that.
So you can do that. You don't have to do the calculation yourself. You just look at the table.
Okay.
And if you get more than you need, no harm. You don't have to worry about it having too much. Magnetic field therapy is very, very, very safe.
Okay, great. Okay.
And the body ignores what it doesn't want, essentially.
Got it. So it's better to make sure you're getting. So you need to make sure
you get enough.
Okay.
The problem is that most people tend to undertreat. They don't tend to have enough energy. And so you have to ask the people who you're buying your magnetic equipment from, you have to ask them, what is the intensity of the magnetic field, the peak intensity of the magnetic field this device will produce? Mm-hmm. So Would you buy a car? That's power. That's the power of this, or the strength of the magnetic field. Would you buy a car from a salesperson who won't tell you what the horsepower is?
No.
Right?
No.
So why would you buy a magnetic device from somebody who won't tell you what the horsepower is, what the intensity is? Because then you don't know what you're treating. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know whether you have enough to juice to be able to treat that problem.
Yes,
Always
I
ask.
agree. Because I agree. It's like you think, okay, I'm getting this device, I'm excited, but you may not, like, people don't know what you know and have the expertise to know how to use it correctly sometimes.
Well, and that's the problem. So that's a big part of my education, and why I get invited to shows like this, is to be able to get that education and
Yes.
that word out there. Not all PEMF devices are the same. Just because it's a PEMF device doesn't mean it's good enough for the problem that you're dealing with.
That's great to know. And can you do it every day?
Yes, and in fact, from our perspective as a non-25-year-old doctor, how much should we be doing? So one of the questions I ask people is that we have 100 trillion cells in our bodies, let's say approximately. How many chemical processes per second in every single cell? Maybe 1 million. Okay, let's assume those facts, and then from that we'll proceed. So what happens then is that if you have 100 trillion cells in your body and you have 1 million biochemical processes per second, how much help does the body need?
A lot.
We don't know,
Yeah.
right? We need a lot. But as you say, we need a lot. So fortunately, magnetic field therapy can't hurt for the most part. So what happens then, let's use this as an example. Your left little toe is deciding to get a hangnail. How many cells are damaged before you notice that you're getting a hangnail? Millions, millions, not one or two, millions. So our bodies are very blunt instruments in being able to sense change in the bodies, for the most part. The pain level has to reach a certain threshold for it finally to trigger it and send a message to the brain. Brain says, oh, there's a problem there in my toe. Well, in the meantime, until it got to that level of injury, you had an opportunity to be able to heal those tissues. Once it gets to the level of injury, it's going to be harder to heal those tissues, right? So if you're treating constantly, if you're treating regularly, you're taking care of business before it becomes business.
That's what we want to do.
Right? So that's what we want to do. So for most people, most of the time, even for just general health uses, I recommend a morning treatment and an evening treatment. This is for general health. So the morning treatment is to get rid of the cobwebs from the night before, right? And the evening treatment is to get rid of the stress out of the body from living a day. And it doesn't have to be a stressful day, but living a day is a stress on the body, as it is. All these chemical processes, everything that's going on in the body has to be processed by the body, and the waste has to be eliminated. So it's good to do it twice a day. Then you're basically more or less keeping up with it. Now, could you do more? For sure. If you went out and decided to bake yourself in the sun, well, you just now increase the demand on the body for being able to heal. Right? If you eat the wrong food, you just increase the demand. If you're jumping out of airplanes, you just increase the demand. If you're having a big fight with somebody, emotionally, you just increase the demand. So we have all these demands on our bodies all day long. So that's why if you're doing it every day, then you're sort of taking care of more business than you would if you did nothing.
That's great. Okay, so you do it, you say morning and night for sure. And then if you have higher demand, and is there time length that you recommend?
It's hard to predict, but again, because there's no harm. So the biggest problem for most people is time.
Yeah.
Having the time available. I guess in a sense, ideally, you do half an hour twice a day. And for most people, good part of the time, that's going to be enough. But again, if you have an added stressor, then you may want to do more. If you do have a disease or a condition, if you have a broken bone, then you're going to want to do more. For example, there are medical devices approved by the government to heal fractures that won't heal. We call those non-unions. And they've been approved by the government to heal non-unions. And the manufacturers recommend that they do 9 hours a day of treatment to that non-union, 9 hours a day.
Wow.
Okay, that's what that wound, that issue needs, is 9 hours a day. And they did research to find out if people are doing 9 hours a day, and sure enough, they aren't. Lots aren't, at least not everybody is. And what they did then is to look and see how long it took them to heal. Those who did 9 hours, how long did it take to heal? those that did 3 hours a day, how long did it take to heal? And what they found is that people who did 3 hours or less took almost double the amount of time to heal. So it's very hard. That's a very hard question to ask. How much treatment time do you need? And at least if you're doing it every day, you're keeping up with the problems to some extent. But if you have MCAS and it's very active and it's very flared, then you have a lot more work to do and you may need more time.
Yes.
Right. And then you're going to have to judge the intensity of the magnetic field that you could tolerate. So you can, if you can't tolerate very much, then you're going to need more time. And if you can't tolerate very more time on a daily basis, then it's going to take longer to heal that wound or that injury or that inflammation or that problem.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. Yeah, thank you. You've given us such helpful information. I love this. And I encourage everyone, I'm going to put this information and links in our Summit resource page so that everyone can go and find it quickly. So thank you so much for being here and sharing with us.
My pleasure. And I want to say that people who have significant health issues, and I see quite a number of people who have MCAS, because it's a chronic problem, like many things in healthcare that we take care of, you and I, it takes a village.
Yes.
There's no single solution. And so PEMF therapy becomes an important part of a comprehensive program to take care of these chronic inflammatory conditions, certainly autoimmune conditions. So we offer consultations, drpawluk.com. You can go to that website, and on that page, the homepage, you can actually look, there's a link saying apply for a consultation. So you fill out a form and we review the form and then we accept people. Now, here's my problem with that. If you're only interested in spending $25 to help your problem, then I'm going to be as interested as you are.
Yes.
Right. So if you're not ready to do what you need to do to help to heal yourself, don't bother. Right. You have to be willing to commit resources. And these are not expensive. These are not cheap devices. You buy cheap, you get cheap.
Okay. So
you may need the consultation is to advise you on the best system that would work for you, considering everything else that you're doing. So whatever work Meg Mill is doing, I would have to include that in my thinking about what I'm going to do or recommend for magnetic field therapy. So it's got to work together. And you absolutely need to do nutrition. You can't build the house without bricks and mortar. You have to add the nutrition so that cells can repair. If you're deficient in minerals, if you're deficient in proteins, if you're deficient in fats, you're not going to be able to heal tissue because the tissue needs all of those molecules and basically metabolites and so on to be able to do the healing work.
Yes.
Right. So you need to combine. That's why you need to combine many different types of resources to get the best work for yourself.
And I totally agree with you. I think with MCAS, it is really looking at that as a total modality where we're adding what can we do and put all these pieces together and then really think of it in the long term. So I mean, we live in a quick fix world, and I think that's exactly what you're saying. When you just are like, okay, I need something right now, well, maybe that's really when you're looking at it long term. We need to do all of these things for over time and put the pieces together to get the results that we really want. But if you do,
absolutely.
We see them, so it's worth it.
The other thing I might add, if you don't mind, is that people are often fishing and go out and acquire all kinds of devices, and everybody's making claims on what their system will do or their process will do, et cetera. As a holistic physician, having looked at all these technologies, being trained in acupuncture, I've looked at red light therapy, I've looked at ozone therapies, I've looked at hyperbaric, I've looked at laser, I've looked at infrared, saunas, and so on. They all have a value, and they all cost. So where are you going to put your money? What I found out over time, because PEMFs do so much, and they work so deep in the body, they work through the entire volume of the body. Many other therapies are very superficial. Light is very superficial. Sauna is very superficial. It causes reactions, secondary reactions, but they're superficial. And you could spend $3,000, $5,000 for a red light therapy machine or infrared or even sauna. And so what happens then is that you're getting a limited level of benefit. If you haven't bought those already, if you bought them, you can use them with magnetic field therapy. That's not a problem at all. And it will work better together. But if you haven't bought them, the best value generally for the money and safely is going to be PEMF therapy.
Yes.
So if you could add something first, add PEMF therapy first. Other than nutrition, other than detox, those are still critical factors that go around whatever else you're going to do, whatever the other sort of technical modalities are going to be.
Yes, and we're bombarded with information. So I think
we
I
are
love
totally
that.
bombarded.
I know it's hard because I get questions all the time where, like, I saw an ad for this, and that, what you don't need to go. And that's not necessarily
Absolutely.
something that's right for you right now. So it's wonderful to have you and your expertise, and that you actually offer the consults to help people navigate what they need to do. And that's really wonderful too, because I think getting the right device for your unique situation is also another important thing.
Yeah, we do that because it's such a big choice, and it's an expensive choice, and it conflicts with so many other things. And I'm selling a service. I'm not selling a device. You have to buy a device in order to get the service, in order to get the benefits from it. You can't read about it and understand it and help you to heal with it. You have to get something. But we want you to get the right piece of equipment, because so often people get the wrong equipment and they get the wrong support, or they don't get enough support. And what we try to do is to offer all of that, because my goal as a doctor is not so much to make money. And obviously I have to pay bills, right? But my goal is to get magnetic field therapy out there as widely as possible, so that people have an excellent, safe tool to use that they can keep using. And I tell people that when they buy a magnetic system, they don't own it.
Yes.
The house owns it.
Yeah, that's good. You're right.
Including the dog, the cat, and the plants.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for all of the information you shared. And do you have anything else that you want to share with the audience?
I think that's enough for one day. I think.
I think you got it all. So thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Meg. Be well. Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for joining me on the PEMF Effect. I hope today's conversation gave you new tools, insights, and inspiration to take control of your health. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could benefit from PEMF therapy and holistic healing. Your body has the power to repair, recover, and thrive. Sometimes it just needs the right charge. Until next time, stay curious, stay proactive, and keep powering up to better health.